Gay programming.
Welcome to Gay Programming. As always, I am your host, Marceline, aka FemMarks. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and lovely boyfriend, Merlin Kirby, aka Angsty Vegan.
You couldn't even, edit in sound effects? Shit.
Good, yeah. I'll edit in the sound effect right now.
No.
Here's one that explains you.
No, you gotta get rid of it.
Nope.
Maybe.
You insult me, and now you've paid the consequences.
No. Now everyone's gonna think I'm a fool.
Oh, don't worry, babe. I get DMs every single time. They're like, the podcast is great. When are you going to cut off this special needs kid? How are you doing today, babe? It's 4th of July, America's birthday today. So how you feeling on this grandest of occasions?
I didn't know 4th of July was coming up until, yesterday.
Well, the thing is you could never forget when the 4th of July is going to be, because the holiday's name is right in the fucking name.
Yeah.
You know, that's the fucking bullshit about all these other fucking holidays. When am I going to remember when Christmas is? Or when Halloween is? You know, it should have been just, it should be a lot easier if they just say the fucking date.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's December 25th. There we go.
You just proved you don't need it, because you just remembered it.
Oh, you know, I looked it up on my phone. They don't see
That's
this.
a lie.
No, it's not. I'm stupid. I don't know when. I've never been in a church. I don't even know what Christmas is. What is that? When you fucking kick a guy in the balls? I don't know.
Could be.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't celebrate that shit. But I know it's on December 25th because we've renamed it to December 25th.
December 25th day.
Yeah, to the day of December 25th when Jesus wrote the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it is. So how you doing today, bud?
I'm good. I've been doing really good lately, honestly. I mean, school's kicking my ass, as it does. I say as I have, an A and a B, but...
Yeah, real fucking nerd over here.
Yeah.
We try to go out clubbing I try to go clubbing out every fucking night with this bitch, and he's like, I gotta work on my schoolwork. And I'm like, dude, babes aren't gonna be fucking waiting all this fucking time until you're old and wrinkly and you can't get them, you know? And, but whatever.
I already got a babe.
Yeah, well, I've been picking up chicks left and fucking right. I've been getting numbers like I was fucking the phone book, man. I'll tell you what.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been doing okay-ish, I guess. I've been kind of going in and out of, summertime depression manic mode, where, you know, you just go, damn, we're at month 7 right now, and, it's fucking, what?
I'm sorry, I just think it's really funny because I remember on one episode you were like, oh yeah, I get really depressed during the winter time, and now you're like, oh, summertime depression, and I'm like...
I didn't say summertime depression, I said summertime manic mode.
You said depressive.
Well, yeah, you know, but I'm depressed. I'm depressed during all fucking seasons. My fucking seasonal depressive order is fucking 4 seasons every year. It's fucking every single time. Fall makes me feel like shit. Winter makes me feel like shit. Summer makes me feel like shit. And spring makes me feel like shit. All of them make me feel like shit.
When are we gonna rename the podcast to... Stay tuned next time. Will Marcie seek help from a professional?
That's
Maybe.
Too much words. You know, when we were originally pitching ideas of what the name, when you pitched that, I said it was too long, and I still stick to that. God damn it, it's too damn long. Well, you know, in all seriousness, things are not super hot in America, and anyone who's fucking leftist or even fucking libtards are fucking shaking in their goddamn pussy little fucking boots. But yeah, you know, everyone fucking knows it. I don't need to fucking inform you. If I'm telling about it, if I'm telling about it on the podcast, you goddamn well know that you don't need me to tell you that fucking the Supreme Court has overturned Roe versus Wade, the big old abortion thing. Abortions are now officially illegal. You cannot get abortions anymore.
Disclaimer, that is not true.
That is 100% true.
No.
Thomas, fucking Supreme Court nominee, holder, whatever. It's Thomas, the black guy. He's going to state and putting an end to Planned Parenthood with a fucking gun.
No, there's tons of states. Well, not tons. I shouldn't say tons. There's a few states where abortion is not restricted whatsoever.
Like this one.
It's true. Oregon is one of them. And also, I don't know the nuances of it, but, pill or medication abortions are... There's a lot of work going into getting those into states where abortion is banned. So yeah, it's... All hope is not lost. It does suck, though, for a lot of reasons.
It's just basically this... I wanted to talk about this because of a couple of reasons. I think it's not illuminated things to me. I've kind of already been aware of it, but this is like kind of a really concrete historical moment to point out that I can use for examples in my own deteriorating mind frame of the world. But also I wanted to talk about it because, you personally have a pretty strong connection with legislation in regards to protecting abortion rights in this country, and in particular have done a lot of work with Planned Parenthood. So I guess I was more wondering, I don't know. I mean, I guess before I take it away with my fucking bullshit, what do you think this means more so?
I have a lot of feelings about it. So, one, a great deal of my work with Planned Parenthood was in Florida, where it did not fucking matter if Roe v. Wade existed or not. They were still, even if they couldn't outright ban abortion, they were still like, we're gonna ban it for minors. We're gonna ban it at fucking 15, 60 weeks or less, or like whatever. We're gonna ban it on full moons. Like, just... everything they fucking could. Now they're just allowed to ban it more blatantly, and so are a lot of other states, which does suck a lot. Again, for a lot of reasons, even outside of just abortion alone, because it opens the door to, things like just privacy regarding, like, I know we talked about how Justice Thomas. That's his name, right?
Yeah.
How he...
The black one!
I'm not going to call him that. How, he's stated he also wants to go after protections on things like gay marriage and sodomy, and just a whole bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, essentially, like, as soon as this all dropped, like, fucking Justice Thomas was, like, mouth-watering over the ideas that they could do further after this, like, really very big historical moment. I mean, this is the shit they've been talking about for, like, decades now.
Yeah. And I remember when, it came out leaked that they were considering reversing it. We talked about it on here. Mm-hmm. And I kind of said the same thing, but I'm going to drive it home again. During that time, there was a lot of talk about, like, oh, make sure you vote, make sure you call your legislators and tell them you don't want Roe v. Wade reversed and, like, all this stuff. And as you can all clearly see, they don't care. You can call them, you can do all the shit, but ultimately I feel like you cannot fight oppression utilizing the means that the oppressor has allowed you to use. Because if it was capable of making any concrete change that would take away their power over you, they wouldn't allow you to do it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, that's like my main takeaway, and I think more people are realizing that democracy in America is kind of a sham. And I think a lot of people, particularly in the more like moderate liberal spaces, are like grappling with that right now, and I'm kind of interested to see what comes of it. I don't know if more people are going to be radicalized because of it, but I think just that awareness is kind of hitting people harder and harder.
I certainly hope and I think it is. I mean, definitely it's like sitting in liberals pretty hard.
Yeah.
Like, I definitely think like, I just like the day it was announced, you could just like feel the like kind of despair that pretty much everyone was feeling, not just leftists but liberals too. But I mean, like, this is like, if you're a liberal leaning person who listens to this podcast, first off, get the fuck out of here. But if you're sticking around, hey, let me tell you, is that this incident and everything that is to follow, with the Supreme Court deciding to overthrow certain policies and forms of legislation that like protect people, whether they be minority groups such as like homosexuals or abortion rights in this country, is that overwhelmingly these issues are either in support from people in the country, or they just don't, or people just don't care enough to either like be opposed to it. But the people who do care are the minority in this country, as far as like having a minority of an opinion. And their only way of enacting their desired policy decisions of like dismantling abortion, dismantling Planned Parenthood, dismantling like any progress, like any legislative success story in this country, that basically this is their only way of doing it. There's no way that this could have ever happened in any kind of like official representative like election happening or anyone, like, the like who got this senator seat or this governor seat or even the presidency would have never fucking decided this. This was a long game that they had planned for a very, very long time, where basically the Republican Party and the strategists in the Republican Party realized they had an OG overpowered fucking part of the political process in this country. And that was the Supreme Court. And not just the Supreme Court, but every fucking court below that. And if there was one thing that, in their version succeeded in the fucking 4-year atrocity that was the Trump administration, that overall was really just kind of a big circus. Like, very little was even fucking accomplished on anyone's side. But the one thing that was accomplished was the one thing that people like Mitch McConnell had been dreaming about for years and years, and that was filling judge appointments. And now we're at that point, that where not even just the Supreme Court is now filled with lunatics who are considering overthrowing fucking sodomy protections in this country, let alone birth protection rights. That this is basically should be a wake-up call to you that when you see Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or people of that ilk making tweets or Facebook posts or whatever that say, now it's more important than ever to vote, should be met with fucking laughter. Because what the fuck is that gonna... What is it gonna happen? You're not gonna... when we vote for the next Supreme Court nomination? Yeah, that will be awesome. I can't wait till when that happens. But yeah, this is just showing more and more that this was not designed to be a democracy where you had a voice and could protect things. And as a society, and as a member of that society, move positively as a social force. It's just more and more just like disheartening. I think this whole thing is really created.
You know what your recent point reminds me of, kind of, is a little funny anecdote. So I remember a few years ago, my friends and I were doing like a little, like, we were coming back from Pride or like a protest or something with someone who was a couple years younger than us. We were like 18. This person was like 14, 15 maybe. Just kind of getting into the whole activism space. And it was during 2020. So, they were asking kind of like, well, how do elections work, basically? And, we were talking about like representatives and districts and how, they don't necessarily count your votes, but they count the votes of your like representatives based on your votes. And then he goes, well, what if the representatives don't do what the people want them to do? And we both just kind of fell silent for a second and we're like, well...
Well, they can, and they will, and they've done that.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem we're hitting, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, there has... I don't know if it was just like an outright nefarious, like, education ploy in this country as far as like our government and everything, or just this, like, because Americans are all like Walt Whitman. They all want to like think that like a ship is something beautiful and poetic and not like what it is or anything. They all like, so they look at things like the signing of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution or anything, or the setting up of our like houses of power in this country. That this was not about like, oh, we want people all across our 13 colonies to feel like they have a say. No, these fuckers were slave owners, and they were trying to figure out how they could set up a power structure that was independent from the monarchy that they were trying to separate themselves from, but in order to set themselves up as the big bosses now. Because they wanted the cut of the pie. They didn't want to give it all away.
Yeah, I think it's really funny when people are like, but how could this like Roe v. Wade being overturned, how could this happen under democracy? And I'm kind of like, our system was written by people who didn't consider women people.
Well,
like, they weren't even voting.
I would agree with them that, like, yeah, probably something like this wouldn't be achievable under democracy. But the thing is we're not a democracy. We're a republic. And that's a very different thing. But it seems to be that, like, people, which I shouldn't be too shocked considering, like, I've gone through, like, a government course in this country. It's fucking laughable. Like, and no one knows the difference between a democracy and a republic and a democratic republic and like anything. They just think like, well, we did it best. Yeah. Like literally Benjamin Franklin sat down and was like, yo dog, I figured it out. Yeah. I read The Secret and I'm visualizing what we need to be doing.
Oh yeah, no, like it's crazy how the US can just make words mean whatever it wants. And that's what they mean now.
Yeah, it's but regardless, this whole incident is very shocking for a lot of people. It's probably very disheartening for a lot of people too. I feel like for a lot of leftists, they're sad over this, but like fucking goddamn, like what else did we expect? Like, of course, this was going to fucking happen eventually with the like ways it was, but I can certainly see how this is definitely a very violent shake, but it's kind of jumping off with a little bit of what you're saying too, is that this isn't the end of the world. This is, it's going to suck. It's not like something that's like good or anything of the nature, but there are thankfully still institutions in this country that are trying to offer these services in a safe, healthy manner that doesn't require people going to desperate means and dangerous means to get these operations that should just be offered. But thankfully there are still institutions, and hopefully I don't know, like just people become a little bit more militant over protecting reproductive rights in this country.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that we wouldn't be doing the topic justice if we didn't acknowledge how, not only is this obviously, very sexist, but the thing is, low-income people, specifically people of color, are going to be so disproportionately affected by this.
Yeah, no.
And in that vein, like, if you're somebody who happens to be listening, I don't know, who, is afraid right now, and you feel like, you might not be able to travel to however many states away to get a safe abortion.
But don't worry, Kamala Harris is personally going to send you Venmo money. She's
Yeah.
going to send you some cash to get an Uber.
God, I wish. No, but yeah, as I mentioned earlier, medication abortions are we're trying to be made work across everywhere as much as they can be, and also there's a lot of harmful rhetoric around self-managed abortion, and obviously I'm not saying, oh yeah, just do something unsafe. Like, I'm not encouraging, but, there a lot of the harmful rhetoric, like, let me organize my words in my brain.
Yeah, no worries.
There's a lot of harmful rhetoric around self-managed abortion, and obviously there are various methods of doing that, some incredibly unsafe and unadvised, but there are resources on safer methods of self-managed abortion that I'm not an expert on myself, but I do know that there are forms of it that exist, depending on your situation and how far along you are, stuff like that. So I just wanted to say that as a little closing piece on my part.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said all my piece on it, but I don't know, just if you're definitely someone who is in a, because thank God we're in a situation where neither of us are really worrying about getting pregnant.
I actually had a hysterectomy just a few months ago. I am good.
Yeah, so thankfully this is a issue that does not directly affect us, which, I'm thankful in my own personal right, but, for the people where they're not so lucky, maybe they're now just in a, literally have no choice right now or anything.
Yeah, it's awful.
I mean, my heart goes out to you. I know that means jack shit, but, I'm hoping, and I'll send some kind of prayer to hope that this, I don't know, something just changes again, and I just hope people take the right lesson from this moment, that if you want to see the social change that you supposedly say you believe in, it's not going to come at the fucking ballot booth this year, sorry to say.
Yeah. So another thing that's been on my mind lately in a much more lighthearted vein is I've been doing a lot of work for myself on body positivity and allowing myself to feel loved and deserving of that. And I think a big part of that is from, kind of inspired by and empowered by a book I just finished that I wanted to talk about a bit. It's called Queer Sex by Juno Roche, a trans and non-binary guide to intimacy, pleasure, and relationships. Incredible book. I cannot worship it enough. And there's actually a little quote that I wanted to read from it, if you don't mind, that I think kind of, it really hit me, and I think it will really hit a lot of people who might hear it, especially if you are trans or, struggle with your body, if that is okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the author is an older HIV positive trans woman, and so just kind of giving context for the quote, I guess. I don't have to be perfect. My vagina is just fine. My body is middle-aged. I never shave my legs often enough. I have a tummy, small unsymmetrical boobs, and the tattoo that I keep hidden, whatever the weather, at the top of my arm isn't going to make someone love me any less. And I think about that a lot in, for a lot of reasons, and I don't know exactly where I was going with wanting to bring all this up, other than just the fact that I think it's really important, especially for, queer people and, more specifically trans people, to kind of have, I don't know, a connection to your body in a very deep way. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think especially with that kind of quote and what it draws to me is I think the kind of like prime trans struggle that I think anyone, I don't even want to say it's specifically even just a trans thing because I've heard cis people who have discussed their own uh, animosity towards their own body and everything like that that can be reminiscent towards
Yeah.
a trans struggle, but not a trans person, of course.
Yeah.
But I think especially if you focus though on trans people, especially, is that we're a lot of the times we're people who, more often than not, like in my case, it's taking estrogen. With your case, it was getting top surgery and taking testosterone. But these are processes, medical processes that we take to transform ourselves, to see ourselves as we feel we are on the inside, or just whatever like poetics you want to use to describe it and how it feels to you, but it's always about transformation and changing yourself. And I think when especially you're trans, like when you start that transition process, the excitement that fills you at the idea that at the end of that transformation that you will supposedly be normal and you'll finally be happy and you'll finally look at yourself in the mirror and say that's the person who is fuckable and I want to fuck and is like I'm good, I'm doing good. But that's just not the reality of the actual transition. And that I'm sure, especially after when you were thinking about getting your top surgery and then that moment after when it was all settled, that's a really big, scary moment because, at the end of the transformation, you're left with whatever's at the end of it. And sometimes, and a lot of the times, it isn't what we dreamed about. And that can be a very jarring and very scary thing that can destroy trans people.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, like, I've said tons of times, like, I don't know if I mentioned it on here specifically, but with my top surgery, you know, I had a very good doctor, hematoma rate less than half the national average. I got lucky and I had this big giant one right in the center of my chest. Everything looked awful. I had to leave the drains in for like 2 weeks longer than I should have. Um, and I did not get like that happy reveal. I got like a oh my fucking god, there's a baseball under my skin kind of reveal. Um,
Almost kind of this like personal body horror that you kind of have to
yeah.
go through. Yeah.
And obviously, I don't regret my top surgery.
Of course not. Yeah.
You know, if nothing else, I don't have to wear a binder in the summer. So,
Yeah.
um,
No, and I know, like,
yeah,
especially, like, now that, like, again, you've healed more and
yeah,
all that's kind of gone and it's really, like, cleaned up a lot. It's, you've settled with the beast more. And you still have struggles like everybody
yeah.
does, but take it by day. But I definitely have seen, like, an improvement in self-realization.
Aw.
Yeah.
But yeah, and what you were saying too about like the transformation part of it reminded me of. I don't have the quote pulled up, but another part of the book. You know, they're talking. She's talking to, I believe, a couple during one of the later interviews in the book, and that's kind of more non-binary. And you know, she's talking about how a lot of times, you know, when you're trying to seek trans healthcare, you know, the word they use is that you're kind of funneled along a binary path. Like, okay, you're assigned male at birth, you're going to do all of these steps to become completely binary, heterosexual, cisnormative female.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there really is kind of this pressure of like, okay, I'm not me until the transformation or the transition is over. But I was just kind of like thinking just now, as like I'm 14 and this is deep as it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've just been kind of trying to think lately that like the transition never ends. Like
No. Yeah.
physically, life is transition, whether you're trans or not. Obviously, if you're trans, it's just kind of heightened in a lot of other ways. But every single day, like, your body is aging and your body is healing from things. And, you know, I think that makes it very difficult to attach yourself to your body because nothing is permanent about it. But at the same time, everything's permanent. So, it can be this kind of hurdle, but I don't know, I've been doing a lot of introspection and just trying to think of, like, how to improve my relationship with my body. Partially also just analyzing, not like how to be an example. That's not like the way I'm thinking, but I think about when I see someone who's confident in their body and how much that like does for me, especially if their body is like mine in any way. And part of that has been like on Instagram. Obviously, I'm trying to use social media less, but I'm kind of like, well, if I'm gonna be on it, I've been trying to follow a lot more like plus size trans people, and it's been really good for me. So, I guess that just kind of goes back to the age-old conversation about role models and whatnot. But...
Well, yeah, and about representation and the need for, like the need for not just like even just representation, but about there comes a need for like trans people and people of other minority and like empowered people. That they need to hear their stories from people of their same stripes. I mean, like, I can't, the same thing with your book with queer sex, or with my readings of Magnus Hirschfeld's Berlin's Third Sex, is that, like, when you really see, when you read the pain and tragedy that people face as a trans person, or the trials and tribulations of the transitioning process, it's really imperative to just, like, I don't know, if you're someone who has these questions of whether or not I'm trans or anything like that. I know the first inclination is always to talk to the one trans person and be like, am I trans?
Yeah.
Am I trans? You're trans, so am I you?
Yeah.
Is it me you?
You're the expert.
And I think I definitely encourage people, like, get trans friends.
Yeah.
Hang out with trans people. Like,
we're very cool.
They're very, very, very easy to approach group of people. They're all weirdos who like dances, so start with a little jig and you might get them.
Dude, someone comes up to me and does a little jig, I will die for them I will come to them in their time of need.
But there's also comes a need as well to just, read some literature about it. Read some from trans people, or people who, like Magnus Hirschfeld, understood trans people and wanted to understand them as they truly were. But yeah, and also I think, sorry to kind of bring all these like strains of thoughts together, but I also think there's a really important part in the transition process as a trans person, where, a lot of it is focused on body, a lot of focused on like getting tits, removing tits, getting a cock, removing cock, like, like a very, very physical oriented stuff. It's also very important, though, in your transition to develop mentally and understand the transition as well, because it just can't be that. It can't just be like, well, I go to the gym every single day and I'll shave my legs and shave my face and wear makeup and then I'll be a real cis girl. Like, no, like that's just not. This isn't Pinocchio. I'm sorry. This is real life, and it's a lot more of a upward battle than just simply taking the pills and getting the tits.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, I definitely have something to say about that as well, but also to kind of circle back to like the talk on representation. I think another thing that's really important too, because there's good and bad representation, and you see it all the time whenever there's like black characters in media, but they're either like a funny side character, or their story is focused on like
My
prejudice.
dad left me.
Yeah, like prejudice, slavery, whatever. And I think it can be the same thing. Like, there's trans people, but it's like a petite, slim, white trans man who passes perfectly pre everything, but also has access to all of the like physical transition, everything.
Well, yeah, there's definitely
And-
like as a writer, I'm very as I shouldn't even say as a writer, but as someone who went to film school and was like focusing on like wanting to be a script writer for a while. There are so many fucking slack-jaw loser wannabe writers who think like, well, now everybody's into trans people, so if I make my action movie have a trans character, Netflix money, Netflix series,
Yeah.
bam, and like I fucking hate it. I despise it.
Because again, like it does have this big. I think a lot of the trans content not made by trans people out there does just portray this message of like everything was miserable and I hated everything about my conventionally attractive self, but then I transitioned physically and it was perfectly fine and everyone loved me. The end. But in something I've seen with following trans and or non-conventionally attractive creators is you see people sometimes in that midway process. Like there was somebody I followed back when I was on TikTok who had recently started testosterone, and it was just kind of great to see them like laugh and exist and be a whole person even though they weren't done yet, quote unquote. Even though again the whole message I'm getting at is that you're never done, but so I don't know. I think there's a big message in the trans community that we internalize of like waiting for life to begin and like waiting for you to be yourself when
Yeah, I mean, I certainly felt that too, where I was like, I almost said like all of my past was like not me anymore.
Yeah.
That like, because that it was a man, so that was not me. And I'm like, no, I mean, that I'm still, and even my parents have that same struggle where they're like, well, I just don't want to bury my son or something like that. They don't say that, but like
that messaging.
along those lines of like, oh, but my baby boy, and I'm like, well, the baby boy's still here. It's just they've developed into something. Well, they're developing into their own person, and it wasn't your baby boy that they were developing into.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. Like, you're also not their baby boy because now you are a grown person. You're not a baby anymore. And
yeah, I mean, some people are just not as lucky as you to continuously stay baby for the rest of your life. You ate a witch's apple, and that bitch cursed you with eternal babyhood.
Yeah. God damn. Hate it when that happens.
That's why, bitches, you don't steal witches' apples. Even even I, as an appleholic, know you never steal that fucking witch's apples.
Yeah. What was the last point you said that I was gonna come back to?
About like, oh, I have tits now, so it's all done, or about sexualizing, or it's about being mentally connected rather than physically.
But anyway, yeah, along the lines of mental transition, that reminds me of like this one time. I might have shared this story on here already. Apologies if I have, but I had to see a psychiatrist to get diagnosed with dysphoria so I could start hormones. And she kind of said something to me that was a very new concept. And she was like, oh, definitely, try to get a therapist and do a lot of like self-care, relaxation stuff. Because starting hormones, there's going to be a lot of negative and positive stress. And in my head, I was like, positive stress? The hell is that? And it kind of like back to what you were talking about with like the excitement, and everything. And if you're like excited like that, and that adrenaline in a good way is like pumping through your body still registers it as stress for something good or for something bad. So you can feel really like drained from it, I guess. And I had no idea that was a thing. And I remember when she told me that, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I'll like listen to that and take that in. And then I proceeded to completely forget about it when I started hormones. And then I was like, man, why am I so like worn out and drained all the time?
Yeah.
So
it's not even just like the addition of like, putting like medications in your body that are like going to have like physical effects on you, especially early on. And then also just the euphoria that you have to constantly manage in yourself. Because if it gets too full, it overfills, and then that's when we have panic attacks where you're crying on the floor, but somehow still happy.
Oh yeah, no, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean definitely like, there's a lot of like oversimplification, I think, of transitioning, whether it's medical stuff or just going by a different name or like whatever it is that you see out there. And it's really good to see like creators, I think more so recently, kind of showing, quote unquote the other side of it, or like the whole story of it. And yeah, I don't know, it's just really important for me lately, and for a lot of people I know, to like see trans people unabashedly being themselves and their entire selves, which I think can feel kind of daunting on the other end too, as the creator, because you want your privacy, you want your all of that stuff, which people should have. So it's definitely kind of a balance, or part of me wants to be like, everybody online should be more open for the benefit of the viewer, but also not if it comes at the cost of the creator's mental stability.
Well, I think I've talked a little bit about this on previous episodes, but it's a reoccurring theme that I think I'm very interested in, where it's like this relationship, and like to be a good artist is, or even just someone who's like, as an artist, is succeeding on the level of trying to share something about themselves in a like knowing manner, to like share a point, share a meaning, something, some meaning behind something, and to do that well can be very exhausting and draining for anybody. And but like, especially like as a trans person who, like, even just getting through the fucking day, like, even if it's a day off, is like exhausting. And some people might hear that and be like, oh, they're fucking lazy, but like, no, it's because we're managing this like entire fucking like mesmerizing labyrinth in our brains that really has no answer, and will have no answer.
Also, the fact that like visibly trans people, whenever they go out in public, are constantly up for like people's speculation,
questioning, and of speculation, and not even just like simple shit of like, oh, what's your art, but like actual, like, just like, are you real?
Yeah.
Are you're not really a woman, are you? Like,
Right.
just like all this other shit of like, that's so fucking draining. And then the fucking addition that like, there is a group, a very like vocal group online that loves harassing trans creators, or trans people in general online. So I mean, like, added all to this, I mean, like the need, the mental fortitude needed for an artist is already exponentially high, especially in this field. But the need is 10 times higher for a trans creator. Because like, I mean, you listen, there's a reason why there's a pretty high suicide rate in the trans community. I mean, this is like, it's hard, it's fucking hard, and like, to be an artist even harder, but it is definitely important. And I always want to encourage and love encouraging, especially trans people, to share their stories, whether through art or just simply telling their oratal story of whatever. I wholeheartedly encourage that, even if you think it's bad, because it's very important that we try to visualize for people, like, that we're people, that we feel things. This is real. This is a real identity. And to deny us means death. And if you're someone who cares supposedly about human life, that's important. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, yeah, but I have always like held that it's very hard, especially for a trans person, to effectively and continuously push themselves out in the artistic field, and that always like hits very hard to me, like, and as an unfortunate reality of the situation.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, there's just, I think being trans, due to the nature of it, even just admitting that is such an inherently intimate thing to share about yourself in a lot of ways. And, I'd say there's a good reason why there's a lot of people, even though they're not ashamed of being trans or anything related to that, they want to go stealth. They want to be perceived as cis because they just don't want people knowing.
Yeah. Or they just don't want to put themselves even in like that kind of public situation. They would much rather be like in the shadows of society.
Yeah, and I face it all the time as somebody, obviously who is trans, but also who is this kind of weird mix of very open and outgoing, but also very nervous. Where I'm like, God, like, there's even plenty of things on this podcast where I'm like, do I want to share this? Will this come back to haunt me? Do I even care?
Oh, it will. It will. All of this will come back to haunt us. Very, very much so.
Do I want to just own it, not give a shit what might happen because it's part of who I am and I want to say it and be loud and proud with everything? Or do I want to just know when to shut the hell up? But yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely like a lot of intimacy in the trans community, which I think is really beautiful, and a very large reason why I am unwaveringly T for T, especially like even in a lot of platonic relationships.
I've even kind of noticed that in myself, and I kind of want to overcome it, and it's not for everybody, but I could, well, not that particularly, but like this kind of, I've noticed something in myself where I'm like instantly, like, I don't want to communicate or associate or get to know like cis people.
No,
like
that's valid.
I know. I mean, like it's.
I know what you mean.
There's a reason why I don't do it. It's a certain protection. It's a certain because I don't know if they're cool with this or not. But I do know if I meet someone who is like outwardly or admitting that they're trans, that this is like I don't know. Like I can pursue a relationship with that person in much easier, and like I'm much more like open and willing to do that. But I notice like I can't even emerge myself to be like cordial or friendly sometimes when I like meet cis strangers, and I'm just like, and not like I'm not saying fuck off or anything like that to them. I just won't look at them. I won't talk to them. I'll just like be looking at my phone and hope that if they talk to me, just like conversation will evaporate and I can move on with my life and not talk to them. It's just like, I don't know, like I do kind of hope that maybe I become more confident in my identity to like overcome that and not really give a shit about it and just pursue relationships as I see fit. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in this kind of like cocoon phase of my transition, not in like more in a way where I'm just kind of like always like kind of protecting myself. Like I don't want to talk to people about like, well, if you're on if you're on estrogen, why don't you shave? Why aren't you change? You would change your voice.
When you were talking about that, I was about to ask if I could dare to speculate a little. Because do you remember what we talked about when I mentioned seeing you go through a lot of the trans pipeline kind of stuff.
Yeah, man. Straight to Kropotkin to wearing panties. Like, it's fucking weird.
Yeah, no. But I do think that's a big part of it because, well, granted, there are some, like, really weirdly shitty binary enforcing trans people out there.
Is there ever?
Yeah.
I've had trans people who've told me that it is unwise for me to use non-binary pronouns because I was masculine presenting.
There you go. Case in point. But yeah, no, like there are some shitty ones out there, but you know, with trans people, more often than not, I think especially here in Portland and especially here today, you know, there's a bigger chance that they'll just get it and leave it alone. And
I think that definitely the best I can hope for in a lot of cis people is just like they don't get it and they're just not gonna ask questions.
Well,
they're just
yeah,
they're just gonna be like, move on.
When you meet a trans person who's cool, which most of them are, you know, you don't need to justify yourself because you know that they do understand, but even if they didn't, they wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But with cis people, there always is the chance that they might ask a stupid question, and then suddenly you're on trial trying to justify your identity, and when your identity is semi-new to you, that can be really, really scary. Not even just because, like, oh god, will it make me unsure of myself, but just because, you know, you've only had to do that justification so many times, and, you know, not to compare transness to a wound, but the wound is still fresh, and all that stuff. But I do think it does kind of get easier, even if you know, kind of start slowly, in my experience anyway, getting to a point where you're kind of like, yeah, being misgendered still occasionally makes me want to just chew myself out of my own skin, but most of the time I'm just kind of like, I am simply too sexy to be perceived properly, and that's fine. And you know, it starts to become less of a worry of yours as time goes on, I guess.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
anyway.
Yeah, you just I think you just become a little bit more confident in who you are, and you also may build social circles that like help you reinforce yourself. But like, you know, and yeah, I mean, I also want to say too that it doesn't help that there's a lot of media sources that people consume that are like directly either misinforming or targeting trans people.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like as the source of all problems in the world, but that doesn't help either. So it is kind of like it's better safe than sorry as a trans person to like just make trans friends and just stick with your trans friends, and every once in a while you'll befriend a little old lady who will be very sweet. But that's the one cis person that gets to stay.
Yeah, everyone gets one.
Everyone gets one Sophia. Everyone gets one Sophia from Golden Girls. And
I need a Dorothy in my life, I think.
Well, hey, you know what we all need? Some friends. Everybody you know.
So loud.
It's rightfully so. It's the Golden Girls, goddammit. Well, thank you again for watching and listening to another episode of Gay Programming. As always, I was your host, Fem Marks. You can find me on Instagram by that name, and I upload poetry and zines. And Merlin is a trans content creator on Instagram who goes by Angsty Vegan. Check out his cool little book reviews on various books he reads, and his cute little selfie pics, but no touching the merchandise. But yeah, he goes by Angsty Vegan. We also have Gay Programming on SoundCloud. That's where you're probably listening to this, because that's where we only upload. And we also have an Instagram, Gay Programming, where I tell you when episodes are uploaded. And every once in a while, if I see a funny meme, I'll re-upload that shit. So yeah, stay safe out there. You won't hear it on 4th of July, but I hope you had a reasonably good 4th of July. Hope your house didn't burn down from some jackass lighting a firework. But yeah, we'll see you again next time we record. As always, we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye, friends.
Paseando ayer por la calle me encontré a tu alma anestesiada, pregunté el por qué. Positiva ante la vida que adormila tu interés.